right? Person who works full time, preaches on the weekends, and raises 2 small children with my wife, and is in school. One thing that I am dealing with quite often, it feels like, is a sense or feeling or a state of being overwhelmed. And that's kind of my lead-in to what I'm talking to y'all about this morning. I've been thinking a lot about overwhelm, about my own state of overwhelm, my own experience of that sensation, and also just realizing that I'm noticing it in people all around me. Whether it's trying to stay engaged with the news, I'm trying to keep up with the myriad of responsibilities that I just listed off to y'all. Seeing the world where we're faced with injustices on scales both small and large that would require even the dismantling of systems to undo, it feels like. Or even if I'm just trying to make dinner in a house that's entirely too noisy. This experience of overwhelm, of this is too much, it can shut us down and disconnect us from ourselves. In moments where this type of overwhelm can creep up on us, it's not unheard of to have a feeling of sense of hopelessness or stuckness creep up with it that leaves us feeling disconnected from our agency or our ability to make change or feel like we can dig ourselves out of this difficult spot. We can find ourselves feeling trapped in a place that we definitely don't want to be. There are also moments, though, when the overwhelm we feel is not from stress or from sorrow, but from beauty, so profound that it stops us in our tracks. Just hearing that folks were just in Scotland made me think about, I had that experience when I was in Scotland about 10 years ago. I remember standing in a lake with mountains and just being like, this is so beautiful. I want to stay here forever. But we don't just have to see things to feel that way. It can be a child's laugh, a perfectly crafted piece of music, the touch of the hand of someone that we love, these moments that flood us with wonder, with reverence, and with a fullness that we didn't expect. And in those instances, we're gladly over capacity. We're saturated with love, with life, with awe. We don't want to move or speak or break the spell. We want to stay just a little bit longer in that sacred suspension where everything feels luminous and connected and enough. I want more of that these days. And they're not just moments that make me feel that way. There are also concepts or ideas that I've encountered in my life that have arrested me so completely with awe that it seems like they alter something in me, even maybe making me feel like I'm being reoriented to the world. And lately, one of the ideas that's been particularly helpful to me in this time, when so much in the world seems to be standing against these values that I hold dear, that we as Unitarian Universalists hold dear. A time when it can be hard to recognize the sacred connection that we share with everyone and everything. When I need to feel both grounded in my connection to the world and be reminded to revere the infinite set of miracles that had to occur in order for me to even show up on this planet. So the concept that I'm building up this reference to belongs to American astronomer, astrophysicist, and science communicator Carl Sagan, who authored the best-selling book Cosmos and hosted the influential television series of the same name, and who was a pioneer in explaining the vastness and beauty of the universe in accessible, poetic language. Sagan reminded people not only of how small we are in the grand scheme of things, but also how precious and interconnected all life is. And he stated as the origin of that connection as the fact that we are all made of the same stuff, that we are all made of star stuff. And what did he mean by that? If you haven't heard about this concept before, this idea is that every element in our bodies, the calcium, the carbon, the iron, the nitrogen, they were all forged in the heart of a dying star. Before our lives ever began, before there were oceans or trees or breath, there was light, there was energy, there was dust, there was expansion, and somewhere along the way, from the chaos and glory of the cosmos, we arrived. What an improbable, extraordinary, comforting thing to be here, to exist, to live and to love and to wonder, to be this particular arrangement of cells and stardust, to look up at the sky and know that it is not separate from us. So today, I'm thankful for the gift of that paradox, that we are so small and yet so vast, that the universe is incomprehensibly large, and yet somehow each one of us is intimately, miraculously woven into its unfolding story. And that when life feels too big, when the world feels too heavy, that there is comfort and even purpose in remembering what we're made of. I think a lot of us, at least I'll speak for myself, have a complicated relationship with our sense of scale. Sometimes we can feel too big. Our worries, our obligations, our flaws, they balloon until they block out everything else. We become so focused on our own stress, our own insecurities, our own struggles, that we can lose perspective. We can start to be tricked into believing that the universe can revolve around our shortcomings or the places that we're judging in ourselves or our schedules or our stuck places. This isn't a shortcoming or a flaw in us. It's just natural human tendency. It's a trance that we have to break out of over and over again. But just as often, we can feel too small, especially in times like this, as the world is increasingly fractured, increasingly violent, increasingly uncertain. The headlines are relentless. The planet is in crisis. Injustice persists. People are suffering. Again, it's overwhelming. And in the face of all of that, the voice of despair can whisper, who do you think you are? What difference could you possibly make? You're just one person, just one grain of sand on a vast shoreline. Thich Nhat Hanh, the beloved Vietnamese Zen master, gave us the word interbeing. He explained it like this. If you are a poet, you will see clearly that there is a cloud floating in a sheet of paper. Without a cloud, there will be no rain. Without the rain, the trees cannot grow, and without trees, we cannot make paper. The same could be said about that grain of sand. Even as that tiny grain of sand exists nondescript among immeasurable counterparts, everything also exists within it. Everything is connected. Everything contains everything else. The cloud is in the paper is in the tree is in the sun is in the sand, and we are all of it. Our Unitarian Universalist tradition affirms this with our seventh principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Not just observers of it, not above it, not even beside it, but a part of it, essential, threaded in. When we forget this, that's when we start to feel too big. We can also start to feel isolated, like we're in it alone. But when we remember interbeing, we remember that we are never alone. We are held in an intricate living tapestry of life, of which we are both a result and a contributor. And this web is not just poetic, it's real. Ecologically, spiritually, emotionally, scientifically. And when we live from this awareness, the world begins to shimmer a little bit more. Celebrated naturalist and co-founder of the Sierra Club, John Muir, said, when we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe. And it indeed can feel like a contradiction, the idea that we are one small life in the face of such cosmic vastness, and yet that our lives have meaning. But the universe needs every piece of itself. A galaxy without a single star would not be complete. A world without bees, without fungi, without microbes in the soil could not survive. And a community without you, without us, without our gifts, our care, your perspective, your imperfections would not be the same. We are not isolated anomalies. We are not burdens. We are not mistakes. We are the unfolding of creation itself. So to say I matter is not arrogance. It's alignment. It's an affirmation of the very truth the universe whispers in every atom. You belong. As Rumi said, you are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. Carl Sagan reminded us that the nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our bones, the iron in our blood, the very building blocks of our physical being were made in the interiors of collapsing stars. And when I hear that, like I said, it reorients me. I start to nerd out a little bit because I just get really excited just thinking about the expansiveness of that possibility, because that means that as hard and as difficult and as frightening as everything is, that the atoms in my body have traveled through time and space. They've known heat and pressure and darkness before. They've witnessed creation and destruction before. And now they're me, they're you, they're us. And what are you doing with all that borrowed matter? You're loving people, you're making dinner, you're crying over grief, you're dancing in the kitchen, you're making art, you're organizing for justice, you're raising children or planting seeds, or simply trying to get through the day with a sense, some integrity. And that matters. Even when no one sees it, even if it's never written about, even if no one says thank you, the energy you offer the world ripples outwards. When you're trying to do good in the world, it's easy to become discouraged because the problems are so big and our efforts feel so small. But perfection was never the point. What matters is showing up, offering what we can, trusting that even the smallest effort, the size of a grain of sand even, can shift the landscape. To live wholeheartedly is to remember that your small actions count, that you don't need to solve everything to contribute something, that what you do matters not in spite of your smallness, but because of it. You are a microcosm of a sacred whole. Well, I have a particular memory or image that I think of. It's actually from a movie from my childhood. It comes up for me when I'm thinking about this concept of realizing how big everything is and how connected I am to it. When I was 10 years old, a somewhat surreal and not widely popular movie came out called Joe versus the Volcano. Does anyone else know this movie? Yes, with my people. Okay. This was in the era when Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan were making tons of movies together. In this movie, Tom Hanks plays Joe, and Meg Ryan plays not one but two characters. It's campy, like I said, it's sometimes surreal. It tells the story of Joe, a despondent office worker who, after being told he has a life-threatening health condition called a brain cloud, he does this when he talks about it, it's like, it's a brain cloud, like, okay. He hears that he had this condition, and so he accepts a bizarre quest from a stranger that promises to give Joe an incredible, otherwise unachievable set of life experiences before he, I don't think this is a spoiler, he has to do all these things before he jumps into a volcano. That's the goal. I won't go through too much more of the plot, although I could stop and quote like 5 to 10 lines from it for you right now with no context. The point of me bringing it up is there's this scene about 2/3 of the way through the movie. We find Joe in dire straits. He's on a makeshift raft, dehydrated and sunburned and stranded in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And he awakens in the dark of night to see the moon rising above the ocean. And it's so big that it fills up the entire frame. And as Joe encounters this miraculous, awe-inspiring sight, you see him kind of shakily make his way to his feet. And the moon is rising huge in front of him, and he raises his arms over his head and then drops to his knees. And he says, "Dear God, whose name I do not know." Makes me emotional. This movie is really silly, which is why it's funny that it makes me emotional. It says, "Dear God, whose name I do not know, thank you for my life. I forgot how big. Thank you for my life." I've had a few moments in my life that have brought up that level of awe. This my time in Scotland that I planned on mentioning even before I learned about your recent trip, was one of them. But I use these memories now as a practice for myself when I'm kind of chasing that reminder of how connected I am to everything, or when I need to put things into perspective. And I can imagine that many of you have similar memories, moments in your life where you felt that sense of connection that you can then bring up when you need to be reminded. If you don't have a particular reference that brings that about, we can always create a practice around imagining one. In moments of doubt or overwhelm, you can imagine zooming far out, past the roof of your house, past the trees, past the clouds. Imagine looking down from space, seeing the curve of the earth, seeing how small and beautiful it is. So when you're in that place, like Joe with his moon, or in your mind's eye, perched up in space, peering downward, you can allow something to shift. You remember what matters. We remember that we don't want to waste this brief, shimmering moment of life. We want to live as if everything we do matters and as though nothing is ours to control. We can live as faithful participants in the cosmic story, not its authors, not its saviors, just a beloved piece. And this brings us to a reminder. Knowing we are connected is not just a comfort. It's also a responsibility. If we are truly interwoven, then the harm we do to others, we do to ourselves, and the healing we offer the world becomes part of our own healing. We are each other's environment, each other's keepers, each other's hope. This belief that every life matters, that every act counts, that every being is sacred, it is one of the bedrocks of our faith. And it is also deeply countercultural. In a world that tells us to hustle, to isolate, to accumulate, to protect ourselves at all costs, we say no. We are in this together. We belong to one another. We are both the grain of sand and the universe. We are stardust and we are one. So today I will end by offering you this blessing. May you know yourself to be a grain of sand, small, simple, rounded, enduring. May you know yourself to be the universe, limitless, luminous, and alive. May the beauty of the cosmos remind you that you are never alone. May the web of interbeing hold you when you feel unworthy or overwhelmed. May every small act of courage, kindness, and care you offer become a ripple in the great ocean of becoming. Because you are made of star stuff, because you are here for a reason, because the universe would not be the same without you. Amen. Blessed be. May it be.
So we are going to, yes, it's 10:45.